Welcome back to Panda Audiobooks. Jian Wushuang has left the comfort of his clan, and now the true dangers of the cultivation world unfold. In our last episode, Wushuang stepped into the expansive Qiannan domain, immediately facing his first external skirmishes. The stakes are higher here, and the threats are more ruthless. Today, the journey becomes treacherous. Chapters 20 through 23 follow Wushuang as he travels toward his crucial next destination. Along the way, he encounters a dominant local faction, a powerful obstacle that forces him to engage in a decisive battle. Wushuang must once again demonstrate his peerless combat skill, solidifying his reputation as a master swordsman outside the protective shadow of the Sword Marquis Mansion. The road to power is paved with blood. Chapter 20 begins now. Chapter 20. Qianyuan Sword Sect. Jian Meng'er stepped forward, looking like an untouchable goddess, meant to be worshipped by the masses with her beautiful and aloof appearance. Her every move attracted the attention of those around her. Jian Meng'er, 16, profound spiritual sea realm. She had already mastered the 18 first-class sword arts of the Sword Pavilion. Based on her current speed, she'll likely reach the Gold Core realm before she turns 20. A 20-year-old, Gold Core realm expert? My God! Many disciples of Sword Marquis Mansion near the drill ground couldn't help sighing with emotion when they saw this extraordinary beauty. The realms were ranked as such: the 7 steps of the spirit path, transforming sea from spiritual power, and finally, primordial gold core. The primordial gold core realm was the strongest, and there was only one gold core realm expert in Sword Marquis Mansion. He was the mansion master, Jian Xinhong. And what did a person who became an expert of the Golden Core realm before the age of 20 represent? Blinding strength. She's such an exceptional genius that we can't even muster the slightest motivation to compete with her. She's a peerless genius that can only be seen once in a lifetime in Sword Marquis Mansion. No wonder she has hopes of becoming the new Sword Pavilion master at such a young age. No one can hold a candle to such an exceptional genius in the entire Bashui Commandery, never mind the Sword Marquis Mansion. Even those famous experts on the grandstand were staring at Jian Meng'er with gleaming eyes. Nearly all were here for her, except for Bai Chong and a few others. The eye-catching and aloof girl made a beeline for Jian Wushuang, who stood amid the crowd. She spoke without emotion. Jian Wushuang, I heard you finally condensed your spiritual power and became a warrior. Congratulations. Turning his head, Jian Wushuang gave her a cold glance and said nothing. She wasn't angry. You've become a warrior and even achieve a breakthrough into the 6th step of the spirit path in such a short time. That's admittedly terrific. But you can't hope to close the gap in our strength in just 2 months. I advise you not to challenge me today. Don't challenge you. He sneered. This battle is unavoidable ever since you and your father started coveting the position of Sword Pavilion Master 2 months ago. Stubborn. But you've always been this way. She was still indifferent. I know you bear resentment in your heart, but there's an unbridgeable gap between us. Why must you come and seek humiliation? Seek humiliation? You really do think very highly of yourself. Have it your way. You can't blame me later when you're the one not accepting my advice. I'll show you the full extent of my strength and snip that impossibly stupid idea you have in the bud, she said coolly. I'll be looking forward to it. Jian Meng'er ended the conversation and stood casually in the center of the drill ground. Though she was surrounded by many young geniuses of the Sword Marquis Mansion, they might as well be invisible compared to her. She was like a crane standing among chickens, attracting attention with every move she made. For example, everyone had noticed the brief conversation between her and Jian Wushuang. Jian Meng'er is talking to Jian Wushuang. What is she saying? Earlier, they spoke in very quiet voices. Coupled with the noise in the drill ground, no one except the talented disciples close to them heard their conversation. They became very curious about it. I heard that Jian Wushuang made a blood oath 2 months ago to battle it out with Jian Meng'er today. I heard that too. This guy is really overreaching himself. How dare he challenge Jian Meng'er? Who among us young disciples of Sword Marquis Mansion has the right to challenge this god's chosen daughter? Jian Wushuang is just trash who condensed his spiritual power 2 months ago. How dare he? That's not exactly true. He may have condensed his spiritual power very late, but he spent only a month to break through the sixth step of the spirit path. His cultivating speed is unbelievable. So what? He's merely at the sixth step of the spirit path. A month has passed since then. Are you suggesting he has broken through the seventh step of the spirit path or the spiritual sea realm and is on par with Jian Meng'er? What a joke. That's true. All of them began looking down on him. On the drill ground, there was another person who was paying special attention to Jian Wushuang. It was Jian Lin. 1 month ago, Jian Wushuang defeated him, and badly at that. He had been harboring deep resentment since then, and today was his chance to avenge himself. He held his hands firmly together, repeating Jian Wushuang's name in his mind. The young disciples who had passed the fifth story of the trial tower gathered in the middle of the drill ground. Just as Jian Lan was getting ready to announce the start of the battle, 2 people showed up nearby. What? The famous experts on the grandstand noticed the newcomers immediately and instantly looked at them with sharp eyes. Even the languid Bai Chong couldn't help glancing at them. Primordial gold core. Not only that, the peak of the gold core realm. The famous experts were all awed. Those with primordial gold cores were definitely top-notch experts in the Basui Commandery. Everyone with the right to sit in the grandstand had all achieved that level, but most had only reached the initial gold core realm, with Jian Xinhong being stronger than most. But, although he had reached the profound gold core realm, he still had a long way to go before he would achieve the peak of the gold core realm. Among those present, there was only one who had the possibility of reaching the peak of the gold core realm. That was Bai Chong, and that was merely a possibility, not a certainty. He hardly ever fought with others, so no one knew about his true condition. Now, the leader of the 2 newcomers was evidently a peak gold core realm expert. It's her. Bai Chong was stunned, recognizing the newcomer. Sir Bai Chong, you know her? Jian Xinhong promptly asked. Yes. Bai Chong nodded. It's Shui Hanshin, the 9th elder of the Qianyuan sword sect. She reached the peak of the gold core realm 10 years ago. Qianyuan sword sect. And an elder at that. Everyone on the grandstand was shocked. They were all famous experts in the Basui Commandery, with vast knowledge. They naturally knew about the Qianyuan sword sect. The Qianyuan sword sect was one of the 5 sects in the Qianyang province. It was said that there were quite a few experts in that sect who had reached the Yin-Yang Void Realm, and there were even more experts in the Gold Core Realm. In the entire Qianyang province, the sect was doubtlessly a strong influence and a true top sect. These experts in the Basui Commandery, even the most powerful Sword Marquis Mansion, were nothing compared to the Qianyuan sword sect. After all, their commandery was only 1 out of the 108 commanderies in the Qianyang province. An elder of the sect, no matter their identity or strength, was enough to incite awe in these famous experts. They began wondering why an elder of the Qianyuan sword sect would come to Sword Marquis Mansion. Just then, Jian Lan, who was also on the grandstand, said proudly, "Don't worry, everyone. Elder Shui is here especially for my daughter." The famous experts looked stunned. In the middle of the drill ground, Jian Meng'er, who had been drawing attention all along, was already walking toward the newcomers. Chapter 21. The Chosen One. Great Master. The way Jian Meng'er respectfully addressed the woman fully illustrated the nature of their relationship. Shui Hanshin nodded, turning her gaze to the grandstand. "I didn't expect you'd also be here, Mr. Bai Chong." "Elder Shui, it's been so long since we last met. Have you been well?" Bai Chong's reply appeared to be rather stiff. "Ha, the arrival of Elder Shui of the Qianyuan sword sect brings light to our humble Sword Marquis Mansion." Jian Xinhong stood up with a face full of smiles. The other famous experts on the grandstand followed his cue and made their greetings. They had to be humble in the face of the eminent status of an elder of Qianyuan sword sect. Bai Chong's eyes flickered as he stared at Shui Hanshin. He was the only one who did not get up to greet her. "You're all too courteous," she said, smiling faintly. Then Shui Hanshin climbed onto the arena. A servant from Sword Marquis Mansion prepared a seat for her immediately. The grim-looking young man following Shui Hanshin chose to stand quietly by her side. "Elder Shui, is that girl your disciple?" Bai Chong casually asked. "You're right." Shui Hanshin nodded. "I accepted her as a personal disciple 2 years ago. This time, I'm actually here to bring her back to cultivate in the Qianyuan Sword sect." Personal disciple. Cultivate in Qianyuan Sword sect. Everyone on the grandstand all sucked in a breath. It was the one and only Qianyuan Sword sect. For Jian Meng'er to enter such a sect and be accepted as a personal disciple by an elder, it only meant she was destined for a great future. Not to mention, it spoke volumes about her incredible talent. This raised an uproar on the drill ground. Qianyuan Sword sect. Jian Meng'er was accepted as a personal disciple by an elder of the Qianyuan Sword sect. To begin with, she's already so strong. Now that she'll be cultivating in the Qianyuan Sword sect, her future is a promising one. Looks like our Sword Marquis Mansion will be welcoming another expert very soon. She might even be stronger than the mansion master. Numerous eyes were fixed on Jian Meng'er. She, who was already eye-catching in the first place, became even more dazzling under the attention. Before, her innate talent was already enough to make others despair. She was now even more perfect as the personal disciple of an elder of the Qianyuan Sword sect. No one would dare to question any of her future achievements. She was truly God's chosen daughter. Qianyuan Sword sect. Jian Wushuang squinted but did not say anything else. On the grandstand, Jian Lan was in high spirits and said, "Let's start our battle today." The annual Sword Marquis token battle had begun. This battle was divided into 2 rounds. First was martial arts technique, followed by cultivation of spiritual power. Of course, this battle was not meant to be a duel. It was enough as long as everyone demonstrated their strongest martial arts technique and cultivation of spiritual power. Come forward one by one according to the number you received in the lottery. Jian Lan shouted. First, Jian Lin. Everyone on the drill ground immediately focused their attention on Jian Lin. Heh. Jian Lin's the first one, while I'm the last one. Jian Wushuang looked at the number 38 on his ticket from the lottery. There were exactly 38 youngsters taking part in this battle, so he was the last one. Under everyone's eyes, Jian Lin took a deep breath and slowly walked forward to the arena. "Show us your strongest martial arts technique, or what you're most skilled in," Jian Lan said. "I understand." Jian Lin nodded and started to demonstrate his martial arts technique. Roar! A giant tiger, entirely conjured from spiritual power, materialized in front of him, roaring loudly. Tiger Roaring Fist. It was Jian Lin's strongest, as well as most skilled, technique. Swift and violent, this move was also full of power and might. Amazing! What an overbearing punch! Exclamations soon resounded around the drill ground. Not bad. You can leave now, Jian Lan ordered, glancing at Jian Lin, who had slowly returned to a neutral posture. Jian Lin nodded and slowly walked down from the arena under the eyes of everyone. He glanced at Jian Wushuang at the same time, feeling nervous after seeing his poker face. He was pretty happy with his performance today. But, he had used his Tiger Roaring Fist and still lost to Jian Wushuang a month ago. That experience had inevitably left him with some trauma. Next, Jian Qiu. The disciples all went up to the arena to demonstrate their best martial arts techniques, one by one. Many of them chose to show off their swordsmanship. They were pretty good to have such levels in the spirit path, but it was difficult for them to leave an impression on the famous experts in the audience. Next, Jian Meng'er. When Jian Lan read his daughter's name, he deliberately made his voice sound impassioned. Excitement immediately swept everyone on the drill ground, including the famous experts on the grandstand. They all fixed their gazes on her. They had high expectations for this chosen daughter. Dressed in white, Jian Meng'er walked up to the arena. She first bowed to those on the grandstand before beginning her swordsmanship demonstration. Whoosh! The unsheathing of her sword edge caused a piercing sword echo to resound through the drill ground. The sword echo carried a faint trace of killing intent, coming from the first-class killing sword, the triple kill sword, from the Marquis's mansion. Swish! The waving sword light was so gentle that it gave the onlookers the feeling of drifting in the ocean. It's the wave superposition sword art. The moment Jian Menge demonstrated this sword art, everyone immediately recognized what it was. Interesting. Out of the 18 first-class 18 sword arts of Sword Pavilion, she chose this one. Looks like she's very confident, Bai Chong said, smiling. You seem to understand this sword art very well, Shui Hingxin casually noted. Just barely, Bai Chong replied. It's only a first-class sword art, but if you can utilize it to the end, its power can surpass that of first-class sword arts. Oh. The rest of the people on the grandstand became interested. Jian Xinhong, you're the Sword Marquis Mansion master. You should be the one most familiar with this sword art. Why don't you explain it? Bai Chong threw the responsibility of answering to Jian Xinhong. Ha ha. Mr. Bai Chong, you're right. Jian Xinhong immediately gave his explanation. Though this kind of sword art is just one of the 18 first-class sword arts of Sword Pavilion, it's quite a special one. If you show the sword art in its entirety, its power is no less than those legendary superclass sword arts. It's called the wave superposition sword art because the user can accumulate the power of the sword art as they continue to use it. There's actually only one true movement to this sword art, and that's the splitting technique. It's very simple, just splitting. But the splitting process will pile up. The power superimposes on one another and ends up becoming greater. This way, the sword art naturally becomes more powerful and finally surpasses the level of first-class sword arts. Chapter 22, Wave Superposition Sword Art. The power of the sword art will stack. Several famous experts on the stand could not help being moved. Sichu Qingyu continued, this kind of sword art requires a strict application of power. Indeed. Jian Xinhong nodded. The wave superposition swords art needs to constantly store power, so it can be even stronger. Under normal circumstances, if the power can be overlapped 7 times, that is, if the user can demonstrate 7 moves, the sword art will have reached the profound level. This sword art requires 7 moves to reach the profound level. Let's see how many moves this exceptional genius from Sword Marquis Mansion can perform. Sichu Qingyu smiled. Everyone was looking forward to her performance. On the arena, Jian Menge's swordsmanship was incredibly smooth, stacking wave after wave. She made her first sword move without an ounce of hesitation. The second, third, and fourth moves were also instantaneous. The fifth, sixth, and seventh quickly followed. The process was smooth without any pause. The spectators could clearly see the power of Jian Menge's sword art become stronger and stronger. That was the result of the power superposing on one another. However, when it came to her 7th sword move, there was no uproar in the drill ground. To use 7 moves, achieving the profound level in the wave superposition sword art, was nothing impressive. However, after the 7th sword move, she adjusted her wrist. Ha! With a cry, she demonstrated the 8th sword move. The sword art had been superposed 8 times and its power had exceeded the limits of first-class sword arts. It's the 8th sword move. Exclamations resounded throughout the drill ground. 7 moves would lead to the profound level of the wave superposition swords art, while the 8th move meant the sword art reached the exceptional level. She's still not done yet, Jian Xinhong said excitedly on the grandstand. Sure enough, Jian Menge did not stop after making her 8th sword move. She was still accumulating power. Is she going to try for the 9th sword move? Under everyone's anticipation, the lovely girl in white wore a solemn expression. She moved her wrist, allowing power to accumulate to an ultimate level. An unexpected dazzling light flashed in her beautiful eyes. Whoosh! She dealt an aggressive split, directly cutting into the air. The 9th move of the wave superposition sword art was a success. Jian Menge finally felt at ease after completing this. She sheathed her sword and stood in place. A commotion broke out on the drill ground. The 9th sword move. She actually did it. Jian Xinhong stared at Jian Menge intensely and said, in the first place, the wave superposition sword art is the highest technique among the 18 first-class sword arts of Sword Pavilion. 7 moves are enough for the profound level. What more the 9th move? This girl is still so young, but she's capable of demonstrating the sword art to this level. It's truly rare. Sichu Qingyu, Yi Xiu, and a few people agreed with this comment. After they learned the mystery of the wave superposition sword art, they immediately understood the difficulties of accumulating the power by ninefold. Yet Jian Meng'er, a mere 16-year-old young girl, had accomplished this feat. Shui Hanshin, looks like you've taken in a talented disciple. The girl's talent for cultivation is already incredible, but it looks like her gift in sword principle isn't below any of the peerless talents in your sect, said Bai Chong, glancing at Shui Hanshin. Since she's my disciple, she'll naturally be extraordinary, Shui Hanshin replied calmly. On the grandstand, Jian Lan looked increasingly smug as he listened in on the conversations between the famous experts. Meng'er, you may leave, he ordered. Yes. Jian Meng'er bowed lightly towards the grandstand and left the arena under everyone's attention. On her way down, her glance inevitably went to Jian Wushuang, who was standing at the edge of the drill ground. Jian Wushuang, you demonstrated the 9th sword move when you taught me the wave superposition sword art. I can do it as well as you now. Jian Meng'er's glance carried a hint of pride. Unlike the other Marquis Mansion disciples, Jian Wushuang's expression was still without any change when he saw her perform the 9th sword move. It seemed that, in his eyes, her 9th move was just so. Next, Jian Ying. The battle continued, but Jian Meng'er's performance was simply too brilliant. She had completely overshadowed the rest. The last one, Jian Wushuang. It was finally Jian Wushuang's turn. When they heard his name, many disciples on the drill ground immediately wore odd expressions. Jian Wushuang was the infamous trash of Sword Marquis Mansion. But he had formed his spiritual power 2 months ago and gained victory against Jian Lin, giving others a new impression of him. However, when they heard that he challenged Jian Meng'er 2 months ago to a duel today, everyone thought he was an overreaching idiot. Now, it was this idiot's turn. Ignoring the attention, Jian Wushuang slowly stepped on the arena. Jian Wushuang. The way Jian Lan glanced at him was clearly different than how he looked at other disciples. Show us your strongest martial arts or what you're most skilled in, Jian Lan said, his voice somewhat colder. Jian Wushuang prepared his sword, but his gaze was focused on the grandstand right ahead. On the grandstand, those famous experts took little notice of him and were still chattering on about Jian Meng'er. Only the leisurely Bai Chong smiled at him. Jian Wushuang nodded at him and unsheathed his long sword. Whoosh! The sword light was like the tide, surging forward with great momentum. It made everyone feel as if they had been submerged in the sea, yet carried a deeper meaning at the same time. Ah! Once Jian Wushuang demonstrated his swordsmanship, everyone on the drill ground was surprised. Even the famous experts in the grandstand were amazed. Wave superposition sword art. This little boy is also performing the wave superposition sword art. Sichu Qingyu laughed happily. It's the same sword art as Jian Meng'er. But since hers was too dazzling earlier, this boy wouldn't impress us even if he does as well as her. It doesn't matter even if he performs the 7th or 8th move, Yi Xiu said, laughing. That may not be true, Bai Chong suddenly spoke up. What do you mean? Sichu Qingyu and Yi Xiu asked. If Jian Meng'er can demonstrate the 9th sword move, reaching great heights in the wave superposition sword art, do you think the genius who imparted the sword art to her will be worse off? Bai Chong replied. What? Everyone in the stands was shocked. Mr. Bai Chong, are you saying that little boy taught Jian Meng'er the wave superposition sword art? Can he also perform the 9th sword move? Sichu Qingyu asked, having connected the dots. I don't know how good he is. Let's just watch and see, Bai Chong replied perfunctorily, not saying much. The curiosity of these famous experts in the stands had been piqued, so they immediately concentrated their attention on Jian Wushuang. Chapter 23. Supreme Level? Transcend it. When everyone saw that Jian Wushuang was also performing the wave superposition sword art, an uproar was raised on the drill ground. He dared to perform the wave superposition sword art. He's digging his own grave. It was not such a big deal if 2 contestants demonstrated the same sword art here. But one of them was a dazzling and peerless genius, and the other was the one who challenged that talent 2 months ago. It felt like a subtle provocation for Jian Wushuang to perform the same sword art. Jian Meng'er had already pushed this sword art to its greatest height. Isn't Jian Wushuang asking for trouble by performing it? That's not for sure. Don't forget it was Jian Wushuang who taught Jian Meng'er this sword art. So what? Jian Meng'er demonstrated the 9th sword move. Even if Jian Wushuang can do the same, what can he prove? What's the point to his provocation? All eyes were on Jian Wushuang, who was standing on the arena. Many were wearing sneers on their faces. A small part of the disciples in Sword Pavilion wanted to argue for him, but those arguments seemed so weak in front of the Jian Meng'er who had performed the 9th move of this sword art. Jian Wushuang ignored everyone else. He had long focused all his attention on performing this sword art. Wave superposition sword art was a constant accumulation of power, stacked one over the other, requiring mastery of the most basic sword techniques. The sword light emerged like a tide. There was no hesitation in Jian Wushuang's movements as he performed the first 7 sword moves under everyone's eyes. The sound of the sword slicing the air reverberated with each move. His moves were still smooth after the 7th one and much more coordinated compared to Jian Meng'er's. The 8th sword move followed the 7th. It's the 8th sword move. People on the drill ground looked at him with earnest attention. But Jian Wushuang did not stop after the 8th sword move, and everyone realized he was attempting the 9th sword move. But the 9th move was the peak level of this sword art. Would he be able to do it? Just as the curiosity of the spectators was roused, he was already ready to make his move in the next moment. In an instant, he made another sword move. The 9th sword move. He still demonstrated it naturally and smoothly. Exclamations rang all over the drill ground. Ha ha! As expected, Bai Chong was right on the mark. This little boy actually managed to perform the 9th sword move, and he did it even more smoothly than Jian Meng'er. His talent for sword principle is no less than hers, Sichu Qingyu said, smiling. The other famous experts in the grandstand nodded to show their agreements. Don't make your assumptions too soon. It's still too early to decide, said Bai Chong, wearing a mysterious smile. Everyone was stunned and instantly turned towards the arena. Instead of sheathing his blade, Jian Wushuang, who had completed the 9th sword move, continued to wield his sword. What? The drill ground fell into silence just then. He had already completed the 9th sword move and had theoretically reached the limit. Yet he did not sheath his blade. What did he want to do? Don't tell me, he's attempting the 10th move. With someone speaking, the whole drill ground burst into exclamations in an instant. The 10th sword move. He's going to perform the 10th sword move. Is there be a 10th move in the wave superposition sword art? Everyone was stunned. That included Jian Meng'er, whose beautiful eyes were staring at Jian Wushuang in disbelief. Jian Wushuang was indeed continuing this sword art, power superposed on one another. When it finally reached a certain degree, his face turned steely and he stepped forward to make another sword move without any hesitation. The 10th move. Swish! His sword edge cut through the air, making an ear-splitting explosion. The power of the 10th sword move was evidently far stronger than the 9th sword move. A furor swept the drill ground. Bravo! Sichu Qingyu suddenly stood up, his eyes flashing with excitement. Jian Xinhong, your Sword Marquis Mansion really has so many talents. We don't even have to talk about Jian Meng'er. She's an amazing genius. And you have this boy who has superposed the power 10 times and performed the 10th sword. His talent in sword principle is pretty terrifying. Yi Xiu looked at Jian Xinhong, his words carrying a deeper meaning. This. Jian Xinhong was pretty shocked himself. He did not know how he should respond. Jian Xinhong, didn't you just say the highest level of this sword art was the 9th move? What about the 10th move? Sichu Qingyu asked. Jian Xinhong took a deep breath and said solemnly, indeed, the highest level of the wave superposition sword art is the 9th move. The 10th move is at the supreme level. However, it's too hard to perform it. Since the time Sword Marquis Mansion obtained this sword art, there has only been one person who could perform the 10th move. That was Jian Nantian, the previous Sword Pavilion Master. And this boy is his son. Jian Nanshan's son. Sichu Qingyu was frozen in shock. Instantly, the famous experts in the grandstand began to look at Jian Wushuang differently. The 10th move. I just knew the boy wouldn't disappoint me. A smile came over Bai Chong's face but disappeared just as quickly. What? Bai Chong blurted out in surprise. This. Everyone in the grandstand was astonished. Jian Wushuang, whose performance of the 10th move had left everyone astounded, was not done yet. His sword light began to flutter, ready to accumulate power. He was going to attempt the 11th move. That's impossible. Even Jian Xinhong could not help standing up, eyes gleaming with horror. This boy is mad. He's mad. Under the arena, Jian Lan was shouting again and again. The 11th move. Bai Chong and the rest in grandstand stood up with surprise. Even the high and lofty Shui Hanshin was stunned and, for the first time, looking at him approvingly. The drill ground sank into a deadly silence. Everyone's eyes were concentrated on Jian Wushuang. He did not pay mind to their attention and closed his eyes, recalling everything his father told him when he taught him this sword art. Shuang, remember that there's no such thing as the supreme level to any sword art. If the 10th move is the supreme level of the wave superposition sword art, all you need to do is to transcend the supreme level. Swish! The ruthless sword light emerged with fury. This sword move seemed capable of splitting the world into two. On the arena, Jian Wushuang opened his eyes. A faint smile appeared on his face. I have transcended the supreme level. Father, I've done it. And with that major confrontation resolved, we conclude chapter 23. Wushuang has not only navigated the treacherous roads but has successfully crushed a significant threat, securing valuable resources and reputation along the way. He has proven that his heavenly creation skill can stand up to the cruel reality of the wider world. The preparation is done. The journey is complete. Wushuang has now arrived at his next crucial stop, the formidable Sky Mountain Academy, or equivalent major power structure. The trials within will be far deadlier than anything he faced in the Sword Marquis Mansion. Join us next time for chapters 24, 25, 26, and 27, where Wushuang steps into a competitive, ruthless environment filled with genuine geniuses and powerful masters. Thank you for listening to Panda Audiobooks. If you are ready for Wushuang's next grand test, please subscribe and hit that notification bell.